I'm Tracy Sinclair, and welcome to this edition of In-Depth Alaska. 2 Russian aircraft and 2 aircraft from the People's Republic of China were intercepted in the Alaska Air Defense Identification Zone on Wednesday. That's according to military officials. The aircraft were intercepted by U.S. and Canadian fighter jets, according to the North American Aerospace Defense Command, or NORAD. NORAD reports that the aircraft did not cross into American or Canadian airspace and remained inside international space. NORAD said they do not see this activity as a threat. Our intern, Madison Knutson, spoke with Alaska Senator Dan Sullivan about the incursion and how he views the action. Here's an extended version of that interview. Madison's first question was, how big of a deal is this?
Well, it's a big deal, first of all, because it's unprecedented. And I'm checking with my military sources. And it's an escalation. This is the first time Russian Bear bombers and Chinese jet engine bombers have sent a joint bomber task force, Russian-Chinese, into what we call Alaska's ADIZ, the Air Defense Identification Zone. And almost certainly it's a provocation, not just an escalation, because they did it right as the President of the United States was addressing the nation. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. So it's an escalation. We've never seen the Russians and Chinese send a joint bomber task force, I'm pretty sure anywhere in the world, but definitely not in Alaska. As you know, they have been sending joint naval task force for the last 2 years. But it's different when you're sending bombers. So I think, now look, we always want to compliment our brave military members. This time, working closely with our Canadian allies, they tracked, intercepted, and conducted this joint operation very professionally. And by the way, Madison, one thing on that, these are not easy operations. A lot of people are like, well, our military is so good. You know, these men and women got to go way out into our airspace. They often have to tank up. You know, that means the jet fighters only have a certain amount of gas, so they have to go up to a bigger tanker aircraft and tank up several times, meaning refuel. And then they got to conduct these intercepts, which are very close, professionally. But I think there's a couple broader implications here. Obviously, Alaska continues to be on the front line of the authoritarian aggression by the dictators in Russia and China, who are increasingly working together. The Arctic is a critical area of strategic competition between the Russians, the Chinese, and the United States. And as I have been warning our Pentagon leaders for years, these kind of joint Russian-Chinese incursions, whether on the sea or in the air, near Alaska, are going to continue. And importantly for our state, but our country, you know, for that reason, the United States needs to continue to build up our military forces and the infrastructure that goes with it in Alaska to protect our state and our nation's vital interests, both in the Arctic and the Indo-PACOM theater.
Considering this was, you know, an escalation of what we've seen in the past, especially with Russian ships, should people be concerned in Alaska about their safety?
No, I don't think people should be concerned about their safety. I think we in Alaska need to continue to be vigilant. Like I said, unlike most states, I think most Alaskans recognize we are on the front lines. 3 weeks ago, we saw a Chinese naval task force that came into our 200-mile territorial waters. Last summer, we had a big joint Russian-Chinese naval task force. The summer before that, we had a big joint Russian-Chinese naval task force. And then now we have this joint bomber task force, which, as I said, is definitely an escalation. The key is, and I've encouraged I had 2 meetings just in the last 2 weeks with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And I've encouraged them, when these kind of incursions happen, we need to send a strong military signal that the United States will protect our nation's interests, whether it's in the Arctic or on the East Coast. And I do often tell our Pentagon leaders, hey, just because Alaska is a little bit further away than, New York City and Washington, D.C., that doesn't mean you shouldn't send a strong, robust response. They need to. And I think they're getting that message. Like I said, having our aircraft intercept these bombers with Canadians is a good symbol of a joint cooperation between the two NORAD countries. That's us and Canada. But again, to your question, I don't think people should be fearful. We Alaskans, I think we're seeing it, need to recognize we are in a era of authoritarian aggression with these dictatorships, and what they respond to is force. And I think we showed force today with a professional intercept of these bombers. And again, I want to commend the professional military members at Alaska Command that coordinated this intercept tonight.
Another question I had is sort of going forward, are there going to be sanctions towards Russia and China and especially their air and military? Are we planning to penalize them at all?
Well, look, I don't know if the word sanctions is the right word. I just think this underscores the need for more readiness. And as I mentioned, the continuation of the buildup of our military forces in Alaska to be ready. Again, coming into the ADIS is it's pretty regular. We always go intercept Russian Bear bombers when they do it. But this is an escalation. Russia and China bombers, and they're big bombers if you go Google them. One is a T-95, that's a Bear bomber, and the other is a Chinese H-6, which is a twin-engine jet bomber. That's an escalation. Those two dictatorships working together in our neighborhood. And again, I don't think it's a coincidence at all that they did it when the President of the United States was addressing the nation tonight.
So you're kind of saying, that they made this escalation and they wanted to send a message to the United States.
Oh, I think there's no doubt they're trying to send a message to us. And there's no doubt that they're increasingly working together. And in my view, that's dangerous. And there's no doubt, from my perspective, that we need to build up our military in Alaska and build up our readiness, because if you don't do anything, if you don't react to these kind of escalations, they're only going to do more of them and in bigger numbers. And
just a last question: is there anything else you'd like to say to Alaskans who might be concerned about this, or to anyone else maybe in the lower 48s who might not see the severity of this situation?
Well, again, I think Alaskans, whether it's during World War II, where we played such a key role, during the Cold War, where we played such a key role, I think it's just a testament to what the father of the U.S. Air Force, Billy Mitchell, said: we're the most strategically important place in the world. I think most Alaskans know that. And again, my view is this shouldn't be a cause for fear. It should be a cause for additional vigilance and a recognition of our need for additional readiness. And I think this goes without saying, Madison, but I always like to repeat it, a appreciation of the young men and women, professionals who are doing these intercepts, like I said, these are not easy to do at all. And our military makes it look flawless. And an appreciation for the professionalism of the young men and women who are in these aircraft flying these missions, intercepting Russian and Chinese bombers coming into our territory. You know, most of these men and women are in their 20s and 30s, right? And they do an exceptional job. And I think we're all proud of them.
Thank you for joining us on this edition of In Depth Alaska. Please like and subscribe to this podcast.